Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So it's Wednesday, and B and I are here in the Nutmeg State, also called the Constitution State. And we're going to talk about the Constitution in a minute. The reason Connecticut is called the Constitution State, and it used to say that on their license plates, is because the guy that came up with what is called the Connecticut Compromise was a guy named Roger Sherman. And he was one of the delegates to the Constitutional Convention. He was also a guy that had 15 kids, so he did other things. But he's the one that proposed a bicameral legislature. A lot of the bigger states like Virginia wanted to have representation just by population. But smaller states, like say Delaware, or states with less population, wanted to have, equal representation. So he came up with the idea of the bicameral legislature. So the House of Representatives, the People's House, right? Some people like to call it. Excuse me. Representation based on population, and then the Senate, the higher chamber, representation based on just everybody getting the exact same number of senators. Of course, also back then when the Constitution was originally written, senators were elected by state legislatures. It wasn't until the Constitution was later amended that the direct election of senators became a thing. And since we just had the direct election of a senator last night in Georgia, I thought I'd mention that too. And I gotta say, without regard to party, I'm kind of just sick and tired of listening to really stupid people running for high office. I don't give a shit whether you haven't figured out if somebody's whether it's better to be a vampire or a werewolf. I mean, seriously, man, like we got some things that need to get fixed. And it's not that. So anyway, that's that. So anyway, B and I are in Connecticut. I'm splitting my sleeper. Just got a shower here at Love's. By the way, I appreciate that Love's built this truck stop right off of 84 exit 71. Because if there's anything that New England needs, it's more cowbell. No, actually, it's more truck stops, right? The problem I have, it is not that there's not a ton of parking here. It's not a huge truck stop. The problem I have, because it's in a little state. Why would you build a big truck stop in a little state like Connecticut? But the problem I have is they only have 3 showers. I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe it's based on how many trucks can park here. But like there was a big long waiting line even at like 3 o'clock because there's only 3 of them. So anyway, that's my little riff on that. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things that are kind of semi-historic, but also current events. First thing, there's a place in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Hots. They're shutting down. It's a restaurant. They're shutting down after 9 months. Now, why do I bring this up? Because I grew up near Rochester, New York, and, that's where the garbage plate was invented. But the reason this restaurant in Brooklyn is failing is because, well, they emasculated the garbage plate. Because they started serving it with like fresh vegetables. The one thing they didn't make a mistake on is they did get the hot dogs right, which are Zweigel's hot dogs. It's the only kind of hot dog that anybody in America should eat anyway. They're made in Rochester and they have been since 1880. You can get them at Wegmans stores, by the way, if you're on the East Coast. Funny story about getting Zweigel's hot dogs at Wegmans, though, is they're in the dairy case. Don't go looking for them with the other hot dogs. They're in the dairy case. Don't ask me why. Anyway, so they were making these garbage plates with like fresh vegetables and like fresh meat. Not, they didn't want to use. It's a garbage plate, right? It's horrible for you. And the only vegetables that should be on a garbage plate are like potatoes, if you pick potato salad, home fries, which are potatoes, so I guess they're still a vegetable, or maybe like some cut up like onion or something in your macaroni salad. But that's it. Or ketchup, mustard, they're vegetables too, right? But that's about it, right? Like there shouldn't be like asparagus or some other vegetables. I mean, save that for a salad. That's a different kind of food. So anyway, poor guy, he's shutting down after 9 months. He said it was the cost of food. I'm like, yeah, no duh, because you should have just bought, mac salad pre-made in the 5-gallon buckets like all the hot places up in Rochester do. And that's the other thing, is just have a hot stand, right? It's low overhead, and you give people what they want. They want greasy food. They want hot dogs that are split in the middle and served on a Kaiser roll, not a hot dog. That's how they serve them in Rochester. So if you go to Bill Gray's or Bay Hots or any of those places, right? That's what you get. Don't try to change the garbage plate. Another thing that's going on, a branding thing. So I just read that Chevrolet Corvette, right? You know Corvettes. They've decided to make Corvette a brand of its own and begin offering sedans and SUVs. And I'm like, what the hell? Corvette's a sports car. Next thing you know, you're going to be telling me that Porsche is going to have sedans and SUVs. And I'm like, that sounds... What? Really? Since when? All right, never mind. We'll have to see what Corvette does. Okay, so I mentioned the Constitution a little earlier. Connecticut's the Constitution state, right? And so an idiot, a moron... suggested recently that we abolish the Constitution. And, I just can't, right? I just can't. Because here's the thing, right? So I don't even know where to start. Because if you abolished the document that created and controls the Electoral College, right? How is it that you losing the popular vote by a shitload of votes is going to, unwind an election? Like, supposing for a moment the Constitution didn't exist and we just said, hey, we're going to have an election every so often, and whoever wins, wins. Whoever gets the most votes wins. That would be what is called a popular election system, right? And the Electoral College would not exist without the Constitution. But let me take this a step further, because we're all truck drivers or people that drive on the roads. Do you know that the reason I came into Connecticut today, guess what I did? I drove straight across the border from New York, and no one stopped me to ask for my identification. No one stopped me to ask for papers. No one stopped me to ask me if I was licensed or authorized to drive a vehicle in Connecticut. Do you know why? Well, first of all, Connecticut doesn't have any laws like that. But the reason they don't is because of the U.S. Constitution. There's this little thing called the 14th Amendment, and it has this big-ass clause in it. It's actually Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, right? And it has several important clauses. First of all, it has the Privileges and Immunities Clause, and then it also has the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause. The other Due Process Clause is actually in the 5th Amendment, also an amendment to the Constitution, but part of the Bill of Rights. The other clause that's in there is what is called the Equal Protection Clause. And so the Privileges and Immunities Clause makes it possible by law for me to just get in a frickin' car with a non-Maine driver's license and drive all the way across America with a license that is not a part of any state I'm passing through, and go all the way to Canada, or go all the way to California, And no one can tell me that because I don't hold a license from their state that I can't drive there. Now, if my license is suspended, that's a different story. You got to have a license from somewhere. But the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution says every state has to honor other states' licenses, right? The other thing, the Equal Protection Clause, that's privileges and immunities, by the way. Equal Protection Clause says you can't, like, let's say I got a speeding ticket. And this was kind of crazy. I was on 84. And you know, the Connecticut state troopers, they have no insignia on their state trooper cars. They're just all silver. They're silver SUVs or sedans. They do have lights, but they have no insignia. So I was coming over this hill, and this guy, and people have talked about it on the channel, this guy decided, I caught up to, there was a semi following a U-Haul that was towing like a boat. So I was in the 65 zone. I pass him going up the hill. I crest the hill. And right there is when it goes to 50 miles an hour. So I knew that the 50 was coming up. I start slowing down, and I'm still going past the U-Haul. But then the guy decides coming down, oh, I'm going to like pace this semi that's in the left lane. So I was actually speeding up a little bit because I just wanted to get by the guy, right? And get out of the left lane. So I crest this hill. I'm doing like 59. And as soon as I crest the hill, I see a trooper. So I immediately go on the Jake brake, slow way down. And he didn't do anything. So I was grateful for that because I was like, you know what? I had it coming because I was speeding, right? But the guy, I just got caught up in the moment and I shouldn't have done that. So I'm glad it turned out okay. Thank you, Mr. Nutmeg State Trooper. So anyway, I know what I was going to say. I forgot. So let's say that I did get his speeding ticket and he's like, the fine, he gives me a ticket and he's like, oh, you're not from Connecticut. The fine is $10,000 and you can't leave till you pay it. But it turns out that if I was a Connecticut licensed driver, the fine would only been $300. That's illegal because of the Equal Protection Clause. You can't impose a penalty, a criminal penalty, greater because somebody's from out of state, right? So like in Texas, if you murder somebody, the most you can get is the death penalty. That's Texas. Texas residents get the death penalty, and if you're not from Texas, you could get the death penalty. So you cannot be executed more than once. That's the Equal Protection Clause. Okay. So anyway, I just wish people who had a public, like, microphone, if you will, a public, that's anybody was listening to them. I wish they would just stop with the stupid. Okay, just stop the stupid. That's my plea to America. Stop the stupid. And when you hear people say stupid shit, call them out on it. I don't care, because here's the thing. It doesn't mean that they're horrible people. It just means they say stupid shit. So like if somebody in my family says stuff that's really stupid, I'm going to call them out on it. And every once in a while I utter something that's really stupid. My kids call me out on it. My wife calls me out on it. Friends call me out on it. Let's just stop the stupid, okay? Without regard to politics, let's stop the stupid, okay? And here's the thing, right? Like, we're a nation of laws. This idea that when something doesn't go the way somebody wants, they should get to, like, alter the laws or suspend the laws, that's just not American. That's what banana republics do. That's what totalitarian dictatorships do. That's what Henry VIII did. He wanted to get a divorce. He's like, what? I can't? All right, I'm starting a new religion. It's un-American. Okay, so let's talk about bridges and overpasses, right? Low stuff. So I've had this happen a few times, and I wanted to talk about it because every once in a while somebody takes the top off a trailer or off of a truck in various locations. There's actually YouTube channels dedicated to video taping people this guy's asking me if I'm leaving, I guess. People smashing into bridges with, you know, trucks and trailers that are too tall. So I've had this happen before. One night I was kind of going cross lots, and there was a detour in Ohio. And what I hate is when I turn down a road especially at night, and then I see the sign, right? Like, they don't put the sign before the intersection saying, you know, if you go that way, the bridge is only 12.9, right? So what happened in Ohio, I turned down a road. It was like, you know, 11:10 or something, right? So I'm like, crap. Now, it was the middle of the night. I might have seen the sign before I made the turn, but it was the middle of the night, so I had the truck and trailer all the way around. So what did I do? I put my four-ways on and stopped immediately. Why do I stop immediately? Why do I not continue on and try to find a place to turn around? Because there might not be one before I get to that bridge. I don't want to do any more damage. And going down that road, if there's zero places to turn around and there's just ditches on either side, what that really means is I'm going to have to back all the way up that road. Okay? And even in the middle of the night, that's not a great thing to do, even when there's almost no one around. Okay, so what did I do? I stopped immediately because then I'm only like 20 yards from the intersection. Okay? Then I got out my phone and I pulled up Google Maps, because by the way, I was using like a truck nav, but it's not always right. So I pull out Google Maps and I look at it and I'm like, oh, there's a road up there that runs, and this was a railroad overpass. It runs parallel to the railroad tracks, and it goes back into town, and then I can get across the tracks and basically go the way I want it to go. So, because all I wanted to do is be on the other side of the tracks and be able to go north. So, you know, then I pull it up on, you know, like the satellite image, and I look and I'm like, yep, that's a road. There's some warehouses on that road. I know semis can go on that road. You know, it's not going to be dangerous for me. So what do? I go all the way down. Right before the bridge, there's a left turn. I turn. I go over the railroad tracks. I go around it. It's like a mile detour. Okay? That was possible because I stopped right away and figured it out. Now, the other night, I'm in New York State. In fact, I was in the county I was born in. But I don't know every road in this part of the county. It's a different school district, basically, from where I grew up. So, you know, I was on a state highway. And again, usually, not always, state highways, the more important the highway is, the more likely it's going to be that you're not going to come upon these bridges. But there are some U.S. highways with low bridges. There certainly are some state highways. So I was making this right-hand turn because two state highways merged, but the one I wanted to stay on, and you know, I had to turn right. I turned right. As soon as I get the truck around, there's a sign that says 12'9" bridge. What do? And it's kind of funny because there was a four-way stop, and I let the guy that was turning left go. I flashed my lights. I let him go in front of me. I turn. I see that sign. What do? I immediately stop. I pull over the side. I put my flashers on. Now, this time, there really wasn't a great way for me to get out by going farther. But I take that back. It was not a four-way stop at that intersection. It was a lighted intersection, a full red, green, yellow light. But this guy was turning left, and I just told him to go in front of me when the light turned green. because I was like, I'm going to drive slower than he is. He knows where he's going probably. I mean, I did know where I was going, but so what I did was I looked behind me, and by this time it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and this county is not super populated, especially in the area I was in. So I made this calculation, and I'm going to say this right now. This was suboptimal, okay? This was suboptimal. But I made a calculation that if I used the traffic signal correctly, I could get across the intersection backwards and then make a left turn, because now I had already made a right turn, so I back straight up, then I make a left turn and continue on the road I was on. And so what I did is I have my four-ways on, I backed up, because then I had the green light, because the green kind of favored the road I was on, if you know what I'm saying. So I realized, there's really not anybody around. I have my four-ways on. I'm slowly backing up. When I get to the intersection, like where I'm actually going to enter it, I still have the green light. So I back straight up, and I didn't even back fully through the intersection, because by the time I got the trailer into the intersection with my four-ways on, obviously, and then I just hook a U-turn, or a hard left, I guess it wasn't a U-turn, but I really crank it around to the left. I'm able to spin the trailer around and just go straight down the road and get out of it. That's not, as I said, that's suboptimal. Now, I could have called the police and had them block the intersection, but I calculated that I had the green light. So no one, unless they blow the green light, no one's going to come from the side of me, right, and proceed through the intersection. So I only have to worry about cars coming from behind me and in front of me, and I can see in my mirrors and I can see out the windshield what's going on. Now, if somebody blows the green light and they run under my trailer, then I got a problem. They got a problem, I got a problem. But that was my calculus. Yesterday morning, I did a drop in Harriman, New York, and I wanted to go somewhere, and it told me to turn left. As soon as I turn left, there's a bridge that looks pretty high, but it says it's like 11, or 12:11 or something. So I immediately stop, I pull over to the side, I put my four-ways on. On the other side of the bridge, there's an intersection. A cop pulled out and he turned left, and then he stopped. I rolled my window down because I was hoping he would stop. And in the meantime, a truck went under, but it was a flatbed, and he had a high roof on the tractor, but I was like, I don't know. So as soon as I rolled my window down, the cop's like, you can go. I said, he's like, you'll fit under. So I don't know why that sign was there, and it wasn't one of the yellow ones. It was just a black and white rectangular sign. I don't know why it was there. I went under, no problem. So here's the moral of the story. If you get in a situation where you've made that turn, don't make it worse by continuing. Wait and see, right? Like, don't say, oh, I'll just go down here and turn around, because there might not be any place to turn around. And that's, when you just made that turn, you're in a place that might be closest to your exit. So stop there, put your four-ways on. Will it jack up traffic? Yeah, maybe. But guess what? If you ever seen a truck stuck under a bridge, or a truck that ripped its whole roof off, it's going to jack up traffic worse, right? Because then the fire department's going to come, the cops are going to come. You just waiting there to do the right thing is going to make things easier in the long run, right? I didn't hold anybody up. The cop said I could go under. Same thing with the bridge in New York. I think one car was coming and they had the red light. And then I turned and went away. And then when they got to the intersection, it triggered them to have the green. But again, just don't panic. If you panic, you're going to do something that makes it worse. Okay? And the other thing you can do, which I didn't do in New York, is if you have to back across an intersection to avoid something like that, you can put your triangles out across the intersection. So basically what I would have done is put the triangles out to block the sides. You know, now I only have one set, but it would give people notice that there's something going on. And then of course, if they saw a trailer with the flashers, they might know to slow down. So anyway, don't panic. You know, if you find yourself in that situation, stop and assess. So stop and assess, get some help if you need it. Like if you really do think there's nothing, I cannot, you know, like let's say it was the middle of the day and it's a very busy intersection and you're like, I have no way to get out. Call 911, tell them what happened. They're not, unless they're jerks, they're not going to give you any citation. They're going to be like, yeah, you know, sorry. And they'll help you out. So anyway, thanks for tuning in and we'll talk to you soon.